I think we'll get started. It's 12:01. So welcome to our hemp production webinar series. Thanks for finding an hour out of your day to come here. I know there are lots of competing events, including the Vermont Climate webinar happening today. So this webinar is called Researching the Market. Is there a market for hemp, and how do you go about finding that market? We have Rose Wilson, who will be with us shortly. But before we get started with the content of this webinar, I just want to thank our sponsors. We have Northeast Extension Risk Management Education, as well as Sarah, and they make this all happen. So this webinar is one of three in a marketing series. The one this Wednesday is about finding the market, finding your place in the market. We have one next Wednesday from noon to 1, looking more at feasibility about hemp products. And then the third webinar, which brings us to October 20th, is about a new hemp venture, hearing from someone in the marketplace who's actually doing it, trying to put all the pieces together and make this work. So today we have Rose Wilson, who is a market development and business planning specialist. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rose, who will be sharing her PowerPoint with us shortly. I also want to say that this is recording, so if you catch part of this webinar and not all of it, you can come back and see that recording online. We'll also make the PowerPoint available. Thanks, Rose.
Sure. Okay, I will share my screen. I did put together some slides to walk through, and then what I was thinking is if folks have questions, you could raise your hand or send a chat, and we can try and address questions as we go through the 1-hour presentation. The first thing that we wanted to talk about with hemp with respect to marketing is how marketing relates to your overall business plan. And so the question is, what are you selling? We wanted to get a sense of, are you thinking hemp as a bulk product, hemp as a value-added product? So the question for you is, what are you trying to do? And so for specifically today, because we have 3 workshops, this is designed as a workshop series, we thought we would talk about the goals being, what is it that you want to do? How do you know who you would sell it to? And how do you know how many of those customers are out there? So that'll be the goal for today's workshop. And I'm actually, there is a question. I actually did not introduce myself. I'm sorry. I'm Rose Wilson. I'm an independent business planner. I do business planning and marketing with farms and value-added producers throughout the Northeast. And I actually do grant writing for farms across the country. I've done quite a bit with farms who have been getting into hemp, specifically on the value-added side. So I'm not the production TA. That would be Heather and Susie, that know a lot more about the risks and rewards involved in growing the hemp. But with respect to determining if there's a market for your product, be it bulk hemp or value-added products, and then understanding how to look at your business plan to say, is this going to be a product that I can feasibly incorporate into my farm? That's kind of the work that I focus on. I've been doing business planning with farms since 2004. I came to the farm world through Harpoon Brewery, where I was actually working as the business manager for Harpoon. So we will now talk about looking at the bigger picture. So if you wanted to get into hemp, what are your goals? That's really important because, and this goes for any crop that you want to grow, what are you trying to do with your farm? And then how can that particular product, in this case hemp, help you achieve those goals? These are key questions because they both guide the overall business plan, and then the assumptions that you make about, in particular, how can growing hemp help you with your goals, those become the assumptions that you're going to test throughout your business planning and market research process. So these 2 questions, everybody should be thinking about, what are your goals? So whether that's your personal goals, your professional goals, financial goals, what are you trying to achieve with growing hemp? And how do you think that hemp is going to achieve those goals for you? The key with business planning is that oftentimes what we'll do is we'll set these assumptions and then we'll test them. We'll find out that actually, once we've tested our assumptions, that the plan isn't holding true as we thought. And so then you might come to that iterative process of the planning process, which is either can you revise your goals, can you revise your assumptions, and when you retest the plan, does the plan work? But either way, everything that we do from here forward is going to be testing the assumptions that you've set for yourself that technically, if those assumptions held true, would help you get to your goal. So the next question here is, which product is right for you? We have two primary buckets for hemp. We have growing hemp and just selling that hemp to other manufacturers. Whether that hemp is going to be bulk hemp that's grown for CBD purposes, or whether that's bulk hemp that's going to be grown for fiber purposes or as a dual crop. So you have bulk hemp, and then you have actually growing hemp that you then intend to be the manufacturer and transform that hemp into value-added products. They're two very distinctive products. So one of the things that we want to test right away is what is your appetite and your ability to do one or the other. If you already know that you want to be a bulk hemp grower, or if you already know that you want to be a value-added producer, then again, stating to yourself, why do you know those? What are the assumptions that you're making behind those? We have a couple, I made a little table for you to start testing whether you actually have the ability to be one or both of those. If you haven't really thought about it yet, you've just sort of thought hemp. Well, here's a question to help you bring it down to, do you have the capacity to even consider being a value-added producer and or being a bulk hemp grower? So the first question that everybody should be asking themselves is, what do you need to grow hemp, and or if you're going to be a value-added processor, transform that into what products you're thinking about. So what equipment do you need? What infrastructure do you need? And Susie and I were talking just before we started the webinar. And for example, Susie was giving an example about land base, in that if you're planning to grow 3 acres of hemp, you actually need 4 acres because you need to be considering crop rotation. So it's understanding what infrastructure you have, and then once you look into hemp, what are the production constraints that you would need to address in order to either be able to be a hemp grower and or a value-added manufacturer. If you don't have everything that you need on hand, then the question becomes, okay, what do you need that you don't have now? And then what's the capital budget associated with that? So if you need to actually build a manufacturing facility, what's that going to cost? Where is it going to be located? Can you locate it on the farm? Do you have enough land to grow the volume of crop that you're anticipating? Do you have the capital to invest in these startup expenses? And then a really big question, and this happens again, whether you're hemp or whether you're any other product that you want to begin to do as a value-added product, do you have the skills and experience needed to make that product? So do you have the skills and experience needed to actually grow hemp and grow hemp and get consistent yields and consistent quality? And then do you have the capacity to transform that hemp, if you're trying to make value add, into value-added products that meet the quality and the specifications that your customers might be looking for? So what is required to make a CBD iced tea, and a CBD iced tea that tastes good? Those are the type of things that you'll need to assess. And this happens, again, like I said, in the dairy world. You can be great at making milk, but do you know how to make cheese? It's not necessarily that just because you make milk, you're going to be a great cheesemaker. or a great ice cream maker. So the questions that you need to really understand are you going to be able to produce that product? And if it's not you, then where are you either going to gain that experience or find people that you could hire that have that experience? Then you also need to factor in the time. So if you're growing hemp as a farmer, farming is a full-time job. Anytime you then leap to farming and value-added production, all of a sudden you've quadrupled your full-time job, because the minute that you start making value-added products, then also that's a full-time job. So manufacturing, that's actually why when you look at supply chains, each one is sort of a distinct vertical. You've got the production of the commodity, you've got the production of the value-added product, then you've got the marketing of the value-added product and the distribution of the value-added product. All of those are actually full-time jobs. You have distributors whose sole job is distribution. You have sales brokers whose sole job is sales. And you have manufacturers whose sole job is manufacturing, as well as farming, whose sole job is farming. So the minute that you say that you're going to be a grower and a value-added producer, all of a sudden you're really taking on a heavy workload. And so you want to be aware whether you have the capacity to do that or not. So, the last thing, again, is that, so if you have the capacity to make the value-added products, you also have the time to sell and market the value-added products. And that comes into how do you participate with distributors and retailers, and how does that impact your margin? But the key is understanding whether you have and acknowledging the fact that every segment of these distinctive roles takes time and energy, whether it's your energy or whether you're going to compensate somebody else for doing it, that they really need to be acknowledged as something that's going to suck up resources. So once you've taken some time to think about whether you have the logistical capacity to produce your products, then we also want to do sort of a personality test of who you want to be marketing your products to. And where we're going with this is that you might be somebody who really just wants to farm, and you don't really want to be engaging with the general public. And so maybe producing a value-added product isn't going to suit your needs, because if you become very successful, which ultimately the goal is that you will become very successful, then all of a sudden you're going to be dealing with a lot of general public. So maybe we want to focus on you being successful in a way that doesn't require you to engage with so much publicity. So what market channels are right for you? Do you want to be a grower focusing on selling to other people who transform the product into value-added products? Do you want to be a grower and a value-added producer? And then in that case, are you interested in dealing directly with the consumers? Are you interested in dealing with retailers? Or are you really trying to get into wholesale distribution and going fairly large? So we put another little slide together so that you can test out your personality traits. And so, for example, here under bulk hemp, value-added direct-to-consumer, value-added direct-to-store delivery, and value-added wholesale, those are just 4 different methods of getting hemp that you've grown into the marketplace. The bulk hemp is primarily if you're dealing with selling to other manufacturers, and the 3 value-added options are, once you actually have a value-added product, different ways of getting that into the hands of the end user, being the consumer. And oftentimes, what we'll do when we're working with a farm on their business plan is we'll realize, wow, you really don't want a farm stand on your farm because you don't like having people come to the farm. So that's okay. We just don't want to build a business plan around having people come to the farm if you're an introvert. So again, if you're the type of person that's not going to want to stand at a farmer's market all day, and you also don't intend to go big, then we might want to focus on growing hemp as a bulk product that you can sell to another wholesaler than having to engage in direct retail when it's just not up your alley. So the first question to ask yourself is, do you like to interact with people? Are you an introvert? Do you absolutely love talking with folks and engaging with people is one of the favorite things of your day? For direct to store delivery, basically what that's saying, impartial in that you're going to have some engagement with more than just a couple of wholesalers, but not necessarily have to do the full go to a farmer's market, engage with 50 people a day. And then if you're going to go with the wholesale route, wholesale oftentimes kind of meshes well with the bulk hemp producer in that you're probably just trying to find a couple really strong, really significant relationships. And as long as you can keep those relationships going, then you don't have to engage in a lot of interactions with the general public. So again, trying to discern where you're going to fit in the market also then determines the size and scale of your operation. Because if you're going to have very few buyers, or you're going to be engaging as an intermediary in the supply chain, then most likely you're going to need a fairly large operation because that's where you'll find that margins are slimmer. And again, that's where you get pros and cons, right? Cost benefits of each. So you're trying to weigh what are the more important pros and cons for you, and then how can you operate in that environment? Are you a multitasker? So again, most people get into farming because they actually enjoy being farmers, but the more that you get into value added, and especially the more that you're considering value added and getting into wholesale markets, large scale volume, all of a sudden you're going to go from someone who might love to be on your tractor to someone who's going to have to balance that with actually also not being on your tractor, but making products and engaging in sales and marketing related to that product. Or you're actually just going to be pretty much running a business, and the farm will become a business and you won't be on the tractor, somebody else will be on the tractor. You'll be basically managing relationships and overseeing production. So again, these questions are important because immediately they will help you define the size and scale of the operation that suits you and where you want to be in life. Because the benefit of you being a self-employed individual here is that you get to make these decisions. You're in the driver's seat, but if you don't think about these before you get involved, all of a sudden you'll be the hamster on the hamster wheel, stuck in potentially a business model that doesn't really suit you and doesn't make you happy. So do you want to be engaged in the actual growing of the product? Do you like making and selling things? Or are you happy delegating everything and just overseeing an awesome business, just kind of trucking along? Communication is also a really important thing to consider. So if you're going to be involved in supplying the wholesale or manufacturing market, you have to be a very good communicator. You have to be able to be open and upfront with your buyers about your products, the quality, if you've had an issue. For them, the customer service is more important than the end product. They need to be able to rely on you to let them know, am I going to be able to make my products based on are my inputs coming when they say they're coming, and are my inputs meeting the specs that they say they're supposed to be meeting? And if not, then I need to know upfront what the issues are so that I can go and source my inputs elsewhere. So that's really important. When you're dealing direct store delivery, oftentimes, depending on the retailer, they'll also appreciate knowing whether you're having any issues getting their order in. So customer service in terms of order fulfillment, order processing, production, and how things are going this year are a requirement if you're going to be working in wholesale or servicing other value-added producers. And certainly, if you're dealing with stores and you're servicing stores, they also appreciate being up to date and communicated with. Prompt and consistently meeting deadlines. Again, this is where wholesale and bulk manufacturing really, you're doing a service more than a product. And so the service is to the industry, getting the industry what they need to fulfill their orders. And so all of a sudden being able to meet deadlines becomes, again, more important almost than the product that you're producing for them, and being able to communicate with them. Those are really going to be critical to the success of your business. So how are you in terms of being able to supply that service, be able to be prompt, be able to be consistent, be able to have product ready when you say it's going to be ready, and produce to a certain schedule, and similarly produce to product specifications, because most of the time the wholesalers and the other value-added manufacturers are going to be telling you what they expect your product to be and do for them, and you must be able to meet those specs. Then we have, on a personal level, time for sales, distribution, and marketing. So again, growing and producing bulk hemp might be ideal if you really don't want to actually have to go do sales. You find a couple manufacturers that you're supplying, you've got some good accounts, and all you have to do is get the hemp grown, it's out in the field, it's drying, get it to your manufacturers. Similarly, with wholesale, one of the important things to remember with wholesale is that you're always going to be supporting their sales. It's never that you just hand off the sales and marketing of your product to a wholesaler. They're going to expect you to continue supporting the sales aspect of it, but at least what they're doing is they're taking a lot of the distribution and ability to get into stores, get into markets. They're taking that out of your hands. So while it won't require as much time as you being the person that's going and servicing every account and organizing every order fulfillment, it still will either require you to be engaged or to hire people to support the sales process. And then those in-between ones, the direct to consumer and the direct to store delivery, those require a lot of time on your part doing sales and marketing. And so again, what you'll wind up doing is realizing that you'll most likely be a smaller grower because you have to devote more time to actually doing the sales and marketing. And so it's hard to balance that unless you're a smaller grower, but you're getting the higher premiums. And this is where it sort of then waterfalls into the price pressure, which is the question of, are you going into value add? If you're going into value add because you need the highest margin, and then if so, then you're going to need to be doing that direct to consumer, direct to store delivery. And then that requires that you be the one expending the time and money and resources on sales and marketing and distribution. Or are you budgeting and anticipating that you're going to be getting tighter margins, but you're going to be supplying a much higher volume of product? And that's where you can fit in as a bulk hemp grower or a large-scale value-added producer that's supplying the wholesale industry. When we talk about margins, that's something that we can go a whole hour into on its own, but understanding that typically, if you're looking at the food and beverage industry, margins from it kind of cascades downwards. So if you see a product on the shelf for $1, we'll use dollar because it's a nice round easy number, then typically the retailer bought that in at 65%. Typically the retailer is using a 35% margin. So the retailer bought it in for 65 cents. If he bought it in or she bought it in from a distributor, the distributor generally would have applied about a 20% margin to that. And so we have a waterfall calculator that would then show whether the producer was getting the 65 cents or the 80% of the 65 cents. And that's where you can start to say, okay, do I need to do some direct store delivery so that I'm containing that part of the margin? Do I need to be selling at the farm stand because I need that whole dollar? Or can I go through a wholesaler in which I'm getting that 40 to 60 cents for the product? And then again, that's for the value-added product. And then if you look at being the bulk grower would be an input into somebody's value-added product. And again, the manufacturer would be pricing in what they're paying for the bulk product, such that they have margin for their value-added products. So the grower needs to be aware of what pricing they're going to get paid, and just make sure that whichever window of these that you can support the pay price that you're going to be receiving for your product. Are there any questions so far? We'll go through and give people a minute here. Okay, so our next slide is basically to let people take the time to think about walking through those two tables and getting a sense of what product you feel is right for you and what sales channels are right for you. And then once you know what your product and market that you initially are targeting are right for you, then we start to say how many customers for that market channel are out there. So target customers. The first question that you want to get a sense of is, now that you know what product you're planning or intending to produce, who would be interested in that product? So if you're going to be selling bulk hemp, whether it's fiber hemp or CBD hemp, what other manufacturers are out there who would be interested in buying that product? And if you're planning to make a value-added product, who would those products appeal to? So you want to get a sense of who is the target customer, and then again, going back to your personal preferences, how wide of a geographic range are you intending to service, and or based on hemp having some regulatory aspects, how far and wide can you sell your product? So once you've identified the geographic range for your products that you're initially intending to target, then we start to say, okay, based on our geographic range and based on the type of customers that you're planning to go after, whether it's consumers, whether it's stores, whether it's wholesalers or a mix, how many of each of those customers exist within your geographic range? And so we put together a couple thoughts here for how to find them. The internet has made the world a lot easier in terms of market research. But one of the key things that you want to do is sort of understand who are the wholesalers. If you're looking for wholesalers, who are the wholesalers that are out there, whether it's health and wellness or whether it's food and bev, and within those wholesalers, who are currently sourcing and distributing CBD hemp products. Most of them will say it on their websites now. They'll let you know if they're doing CBD stuff. The other thing that you can do is actually communicate with retailers. Retailers in general are a wonderful wealth of information because they're actively engaged in the industry, and they both participate in the supplying side, so they have a good connection to the buyers and they have a good connection to the consumers. So if you were even to just go to some of the local retailers, either that you're interested in or that you know carry CBD products, and ask them who are the wholesalers that they deal with, they would immediately be able to give you a quick list of who they would contact. And actually, they'd probably be able to give you names and contact information for the actual CBD people within that organization. So retailers are always a really good place to start for any of your market research. And then also, if you can't find it from the internet, would just be if it's not on people's websites, whether they're doing CBD or not, but you can start to gather a list of wholesale accounts, would be just calling the wholesaler to find out, are you working with CBD hemp products now, and or are you planning to? So that you can actually get a list of who are your potential prospects within wholesale, if you're planning to go with wholesale. And then similarly with retailers, retailers is going to be, of course, a much bigger list. So again, thinking about what's your geographic scope, and then within your geographic scope, what are the likely types of accounts that either CBD or hemp would be found in, or that your particular product that you think would fit well with your particular product. And you can start with either, especially if you're staying fairly local or regional, if you have stores that you know of and you want to go visit, to do some cold calling. You can also use industry lists. Industry lists are great because they'll give you a list. For example, the neighboring food co-ops association is 38 food co-ops within New England. So you'll immediately have a list of the 38 co-ops that span from Maine to Connecticut, I believe. Similarly, you've got the Vermont Alliance of Independent Country Stores, the Vermont Retailer and Grocers Association. So those type of lists would immediately give you a large number of stores that you can begin to do your cold calling on, to get a sense of how many of them are out there, how many of them are currently sourcing or intend to source CBD and hemp products, be they food and bev or health and wellness. And then similarly for consumers, relying on the retailer to give you a lot of feedback is going to be one of the best and easiest ways to find consumer-based data, which if you're at the local level and you're trying to determine how many CBD-based lip tinctures you might be able to sell at your farmer's market, talking to the local retailers to find out, well, how much lip gloss, CBD lip infused cracked lip cream are they selling at the store level, so that you can at least get a sense within your geographic area of, for the type of product that you're trying to produce, what is the demand that the stores are seeing, and then also what are the pricing that you're seeing at the store. And they can also, the retailers will often tell you what's trending, what's been on the wane, what seems to be getting more competition. So it's really wonderful to get information from the retailers. You can also, depending on if you have existing customers, you might already be a diversified farm and you might have a farm stand with other stuff that you're currently selling. So finding out from your existing customers, hey, if we had CBD products or hemp products, would you be interested? Your existing customer base, again, is going to be your lowest hanging fruit for getting them to buy into your new products. So understanding from them what their needs and desires are will be a really good tool to utilize. If this is new and you're planning to go larger than your immediate local area, you might actually want to do some paid market research. So we have research firms who can help us with doing consumer-based surveys, where we actually pay per survey participant to do some surveys to get a sense of product demand, branding, pricing, and we can specify it to specific geographic regions. And then also you can organize your own focus groups, or you can organize paid focus groups to get specific customer input. And then third-party data, I always suggest that you go with those first-party data first. First-party data is the data that's really directly tied to your market, because third-party data will give you broad industry trends like, oh, the CBD market is growing at a rate of 10% a year, but it might not be growing at a rate of 10% a year in the geographic region that you're intending to focus on. So really using the third-party data to support or test your assumptions, but using your direct research to really inform the business plan is going to be how I would suggest using the third-party data. So the third-party data, especially if it's saying, hey, it's going in leaps and bounds, or whoa, this seems to be slowing down, can be helpful in directing your business plan, but then using the actual retailer information and local customer counts to build up whether there's going to be a sufficient market base for your particular product is going to be important. And then similarly, if you're planning to do bulk hemp and find manufacturers, again, you're going to need to suss out, so who are the CBD or hemp fiber processors that are out there that might want to source bulk hemp, and where are they located? Because you're going to need to get a list of who your potential prospects are, and then be able to see how many of them exist within your geographic region. So I thought I would put a little list of how to find information. Again, this is primarily for that third-party type of data. The Census Bureau can help a lot with, once you've identified, if, for example, if you've identified certain types of demographic information in the local area would support your customer counts, the Census Bureau can slice and dice a lot of your local data. There's industry associations that can help you with information on product trends, and also on, for example, the retail lists. The commercially produced data, Mintel and spins are used a lot in the food and beverage world, and health and wellness. They track sales at the store level. So you can actually get geographically specific data sets and product specific data sets. You can get nationwide data sets, and the cost will depend on the level of specificity you're looking for and the geographic regions that you're looking for. Oftentimes, you might actually be able to access some of that data through the land grant universities. So it'd be worth checking in, for example, with UVM to see if they might have access to some of the Mintel and spins data without you having to buy a custom search from the companies themselves. And that is kind of what I thought we would go over for our first webinar, is really understanding how to think about the product that you might make and the customers that you might service, so that in our second webinar, Is My Idea Feasible? We can talk about how to research quantifying the demand from those customers, which then translates into quantifying the volume of product you would need to produce, and tying the pieces together to say, do I have the assets and infrastructure and logistical capacity to make what I need to make? And based on the input from my customers, at the price points they're willing to pay and the volumes they're willing to pay, can I actually operate this as a profitable business?
Okay, I think maybe we should wrap things up. I want to thank Rose for providing a great overview and getting us going here. Thank you, Rose.
Thanks, everybody.